So at my heart, I'm a massive car guy and I love playing the odd car game here and there. I've always been a fan of Forza Motorsport, but more importantly the Need for Speed games ever since Underground 2 was released. And back in 2015 I was super excited to hear about the Need for Speed getting a full reboot. This was meant to bring the series back to its roots: street racing, car culture, customization, basically trying to capture the Need for Speed Underground 2 vibe again. And on paper, that sounds absolutely perfect. Nighttime street racing, wet roads, neon lights, underground culture, but as you actually play it, things just don't quite land the way that we'd hoped. So let's start with the story, because honestly, it's not great at all. The game tries something slightly different in that it has these live action cutscenes with real actors. They've had that a little bit before with Most Wanted, but this is more in depth, more up in quality, and it even has live cars in the background, like a couple of Nissans and stuff knocking about that look incredibly cool. All in theory is a really cool idea. They even have some kind of superstars in the car scene appear on there, including the likes of Ken Block, but the execution of this is just horrific and just so unbelievably cheesy. The acting is just absolutely awful. It's so bad. Some of the lines they say as well is terrible. The way they talk about cars is just something straight out of like a really like bad parody movie. And ultimately the dialogue just feels forced and awkward and yeah, pretty much pointless most of the time. You've got characters constantly calling you on your phone as well when you're driving around, asking you to do missions and trying to build this whole kind of crew vibe, but instead of feeling immersive, it just becomes straight up annoying. There's no real strong goal either in the game. Again, I keep going back to Most Wanted and comparing it to that, but in that game, when you're climbing this blacklist and working towards beating a main rival to win your car back, it's something that's kind of, working towards what you're wanting to go for, whereas here, it's just feels like you're doing random events with no real end goal. You're just increasing this rep to meet these superstars and drive alongside them, but yeah, it just feels very soulless. And because of this, you're just never really captivated by the story and it never really pulls you in. You're just kind of hoping for the cutscenes just to be over, which they are pretty quickly. Like I say, about 30 seconds, they're done. They're so incredibly pointless. There's also a pretty big issue with just how the cars feel and handle. It's just, a bit of an issue with the game. It feels like it's the point where Need for Speed really started to push that kind of drift versus grip system that we see in later titles, and it just doesn't play out properly. I mean, no matter what you do, I tried to build a full grip build to see if I could go flying around corners like cars really do, but instead you just go incredibly slow, and drift builds are just so much faster to do. If you get the happy medium, and I say medium, if it's in the half point of being in the drift side, and you've got mostly drift, then your car's perfectly fine, but if you tailor it towards that grip side, it's terrible. I mean, with a drift car build, you can literally just fly into a corner at 200 miles an hour, tap the handbrake, and then just fly around the corner without any punishment. It's not like if you go into the corner too fast you'll be penalised. You can literally tap it and you'll just get around easily, and it just feels wrong. And I know it's an arcade game and the driving's meant to be a little bit more relaxed and enjoyable, but it just feels just a little bit too stupid, especially because they bring in that side where you can do a grip build, and doing it just is terrible. Like I say, I feel like this is the early stages when they really first tried to do this, and you can definitely tell that. In the other games it does feel more polished, the later ones that have come out, but yeah, in this one you can definitely tell it was like an early design feature. And then we move on to the main thing, what the game is really about, which is the races, and to be honest, they're okay, but they're pretty repetitive. I mean, earlier on, when you play the game stretch from the start, it's a lot of these small type races, which I kind of understand and get to, but you're kind of doing a lot of them before you finally get to the bigger and better ones, which are right at the end. I mean, a lot of them are just similar in layout, similar in length, and just not very memorable at all. It feels like almost like the map's just a little bit too small, which is a shame because I actually enjoy the map. I think it's quite good. And yeah, they're just not really long enough. There's not enough standout races in there for them to really stand out. They all just, after a few hours, just blend together and you feel like you're doing the same race over and over again. They also introduced these drift events. I think they call them Tug style events. And it's a perfect example where they've got a good idea, but the execution just isn't done. So the idea is that you're meant to be in a pack of other drifters flying down a mountain together, all hitting insane drifts in tandem and looking really good. In reality, it's absolutely terrible. They just get in your way, they crash into you, they have this catch-up mechanics that even if you do get past them to get a little bit of space to drift on your own, they're just going to come absolutely either flying past you or, more importantly, flying into you and just ruin the drift. And it just becomes so incredibly frustrating to do, and there's tons of these races that they've introduced as well. Again, it's something that you don't really see in the later games, and you can see why. It was a good idea, but yeah, just execution was just terrible, which kind of says everything there is about this game. And moving on to something else which is also pretty weak in this game is the police system. It's honestly one of the weakest parts of the game. It's actually harder to keep the police on you than it is to lose them. I found myself just driving at like 20 miles an hour, really slowly, reversing so they could catch up to me. And this was even on the highest difficulty. It just wasn't even that hard when you had the full heat measure. And it's weird because in other games, it's gone too hard the other way where the police are super strong, here they're super weak. Again, I hate to go back to compare it to Most Wanted, but that felt a little bit more balanced, where here it just doesn't at all. There's even a mission that they introduced where you're supposed to escape the police in a sub 200 horsepower car, so relatively slow in terms of Need for Speed standards. And I thought, this sounds like it's going to be a real challenge and something to properly try out, and I'm going to struggle doing it. No, first try, ridiculously easy. Like the police cars are just so slow. You can just outrun any of them on a straight motorway, and you never see like barely any roadblocks set up to try and stop you. It's so weird the direction they went with the police on this. And yeah, just compared to the other ones, it just feels not as intense and rewarding when you lose them, or just a real letdown, to be honest. And I also have slight mixed feelings when it comes to the car selection and customization. Now look, the customization, it's fairly decent. You've got nice little visual upgrades, performance tuning, and some solid options early on in terms of picks for cars. But the car list itself, it's just pretty short. You compare it to most Need for Speed games, it's definitely on the shorter side. Even the choice of cars as well, it feels like they're leaning heavily towards modern supercars, rather than only having a few kind of JDM classics to pick. You know, I'm trying to think, they're trying to create that Underground 2 feeling with this whole game, and it's just, most of the time, you're going to have to be racing in a Ferrari, Porsche or Lamborghini. You can do up the other cars so that they're more powerful, but the options there are just such lower. I mean, for example, they've got 2 Nissan GTRs to choose from. 2 of them, and the new models, not the old models, the brand new models of GTRs. I say brand new, they're pretty old now. But there's 2 of them to choose, so I just don't understand where they were going with that at all. And even if you did want to try all the cars and have all the cars, there's the issue that there's a garage limit that you can only hold like 10 cars. So I think there's about 30 cars in the game, maybe a little bit less. You can't even have them all and collect them all and try them all out and drive them all. If you want to play with them all, you're going to have to sell a car at some point. And I just feel like that's a bit of a letdown. Surely there's a bit of a grind there that they could have had in the game where they allow you to at least try and collect all the cars, do them all up and race them all. It's just, again, something that just seems overlooked and a bit of a shame, to be honest. But look, I've talked a lot about some negatives in this game, and you'd be thinking this is probably the worst Need for Speed game ever. But look, there is positives in there. Okay, one of the first easy, quick win positives is that money in progression is pretty quick to come by. You can get money pretty damn easy. Races pay out pretty well. I found myself within, I don't know, a couple of hours I could afford my favourite car in the game, which is the Lamborghini Murcielago. I basically used that for the entire game, but because I was using that car, I was accruing so much cash that I could just buy little cars here and there off the side, do them up, try them out, but you know, I mainly stuck to one car. But the fact that you could get money quick is really good. And like I said, the progression, that seems to happen pretty well. I mean, there is a bit of a grind there that you need to get to realistically level 50 to unlock all of the car parts, but they don't kind of hinder you if you haven't got them. I think I completed the game and I was still around level 43-ish. So yeah, they're not integral to completing the game, but they would be nice as if they probably lowered the unlock to maybe like level 35 or 40 or something for all the parts, instead of being as high as 50. That way you don't have to grind out the game like with extra races here and there. You could just complete it alongside the main story missions, I guess. I also mentioned it earlier, but the map actually really grew on me over time. It's a pretty damn decent Need for Speed map. There's a little bit of variety here and there in that you've got a nice stretch of motorway, bridges to fly over, you've got some decent street areas that you can drive around, and then there's even like a hilly section where you can do all your drifts coming down. So yeah, it's all really good and it looks great as well at night, and the fact that there's a bit of rain trickling down, actually some really cool pictures that you can get and screenshots that you can take of your car, and just a visual, it just looks amazing as well. The only thing that is slightly weird with the game is that there's just no traffic. There's like barely any cars knocking about, and it's just a real strange option that they went for there. I get that it's meant to be really late in the night, so you probably wouldn't see too much traffic, but it just means that races feel a lot easier and simple to do. There's not that kind of, I don't know, obstacle of traffic everywhere, which I know can be frustrating at times, but it definitely makes races, you know, a lot more interesting when you've got something to dodge and move around, and there's just not that in this game. You literally see a car once every like few minutes. It's really, really weird that there's just no traffic about whatsoever. But the biggest positive by far with this game is the graphics. They are absolutely incredible. Even by today's standards, it looks unreal. If Need for Speed dropped today with these graphics, no one would complain. No one would say this looks like an old game. It looks like a game that came out today. It's so good. It definitely helps with that nighttime setting, the wet roads, the reflections. There's like neon lights in certain bits of the city. It looks incredible, and it's, like I say, it's genuinely not far off the modern Need for Speed games we have today. They've just absolutely nailed that atmosphere, and it's such a shame that the rest of the game doesn't kind of live up to that point. I remember, and I'll touch on this later, but I was coming to review this game on Steam, and I was very much torn between a positive and a negative review, solely because of the graphics alone. The graphics were so good, they basically carry this game so much. But unfortunately, graphics just can't carry this game alone, and there's still other little bits of niggles that I had with it. I mean, the sound and music, well, sound-wise, the cars sound okay. They don't sound like the best that they sound in most Need for Speed games, but they sound alright. But the music, it's just terrible. I just ended up muting it. It's just some generic house music that's playing. There's no absolute bangers. I remember like when Riders on the Storm used to come on when you first booted up Underground 2, and that was just so good and set the vibe perfectly. Whereas this, it's just such generic, boring music that they play. And they also have these loading screens where these tips presented as like tweets, and it just feels a bit cringy and unnecessary, especially with how they're talking about the tips to do and stuff. It's just, yeah, very bizarre and random. I don't understand why they did that. There's also some issues that people had with controller. I noticed a ton of reviews, people saying it's just completely unplayable with controller. I decided to install a quick fix that appeared right at the top of the community hub in Steam. I downloaded that straight away without even playing the game, because I thought I just don't want any issues with controller. That's how I plan to play it on this on PC. I installed that and I had no issues at all. Zero. It was perfectly fine. So I'll drop a picture of that on the screen now so you can see which one I used. It's super easy to do as well. It's just simply downloading a file and replacing it in the file location that you can find just going through Steam anyway. So yeah, super easy fix, and one that I'd highly recommend doing if you plan to play this game, because I know a ton of people have had controller issues with this game. And I know I've ranted a lot in this video, but I've left the biggest issue of this game by far to last, and that is the simple fact that this game is always online. It's a constant online game, and I don't understand the thoughts of that. Why is there still servers for this game? It's stupid. Even when you go into the so-called solo mode, which you can only access that by loading up the game in online mode, then going to the solo mode, which is still online, because what happens is you constantly get these issues where it's popping up and it'll say server maintenance in an hour, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, kicks you out, you have to load the game back up again. Occasionally you'll get like, my internet's pretty damn good, and I'm constantly getting signs up saying you've got connection issues, and it kicks you out. Like, I don't know what servers it's connecting me to, because I can't imagine there being a lot still open. But why they don't just make this an offline game? Like, I was looking in my lobby and it didn't look to me like anyone was specifically playing with a friend or anything like that. I just don't understand that whatsoever. And with it being an online game as well, you can't even pause the game. Like, I tried both options to like pause my screen, and my car just kept driving. I just yeah, so like if you're in the middle of a race and you need to run and get the door, or you need to do something, that's it, your race is done. You're just gonna have to redo it and replay it again, because there's just no pause function whatsoever. It's just such an insanely bizarre idea that they decided to go with this game. Not sure why they did it at all. And like I said, with how old the game is now, I just don't know why they've not gone the route of just killing the servers and making it offline. I'm sure they could do that, and I have no idea why they haven't. So in terms of game length, well, it took me just under 15 hours to complete it, and that was only with a couple of additional races on the side and a little bit of discovery in terms of collecting some little collectibles that they have knocking around the map, such as screenshots and car parts and stuff like that. But overall, I pretty much just hammered the main story quest, which I say the main story quest, it's basically just races that popped up here and there. And I'll be honest, it felt a little bit on the long side. I think it's mainly because racing games are quite repetitive. I've always been someone who, even though I enjoy them, I can probably only play a couple or few hours of them, like a week or something, before I get a little bit bored with them. So the fact that I kind of sat down and just absolutely smashed this out in one go over like a couple of weeks, it's been a little bit brutal, to be fair. So it probably doesn't feel that long if you were separating it with other games to play, but if you're just going to sit down and play this solely, I feel like 15 hours is a little bit on the long side personally for this game. I think just getting it over and done with a little bit quicker and making the story a little bit better would have helped, and then just giving you the ability to grind out the races again for faster times and stuff would have been easy, the playability option. So yeah, just started to drag a little bit for me. And so at launch, I believe this game was met with mixed reviews, and looking at it now, even on Steam, it's still at mixed reviews, and I can completely see that. If you have a look at all the positive reviews, it's all down to the fact that the game looks incredible, and that's mainly what people review it as. But if you look at the negative ones, there's a lot of people talking about how the cars don't drive really well, how there's server issues, controller issues, and realistically, they're the main things that you want to be good in a driving game. Graphics are always a real nice to have, but if the game doesn't perform like it's meant to, well, that's the biggest issue. And for me, I reported it negative in the end on Steam, because the graphics, as good as they are, they're just not enough to carry all of these issues that this Need for Speed game has. And it's so disappointing, because this game was meant to be Underground 3, right? It's like the revival of it, the revival of the series of being so good and everything, and it just fell flat for me personally, and it's just a disappointment because there's glimpses there of what this game could have been, and they just didn't achieve that whatsoever. So the final verdict on this game, well, if you can pick it up for a couple of quid like I did, well, yeah, it's definitely worth a try and definitely worth experiencing. Like I said, probably just see them graphics alone is pretty decent, but at full price, definitely not. There are far better Need for Speed titles out there. For me, this is a game that looks incredibly good, but just doesn't play as well as it should have. And like I said before, it's just the perfect example of how graphics alone just aren't enough to carry a game. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and make sure to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll catch you in the next one.